This is going to sound like so much hate, and I swear it's not.
Without further ado, Timmy Gray, Dallas Cowboys, America's team.
America. As you guys know, usually I have some sort of polarizing input on the Cowboys. This year, I'm just going to roll with it. I think they're still a good team. They've got superstars at a lot of positions, so I think they're going to be a very solid team. I've seen a lot of people on social media saying that this is the downfall year, and I could totally see it. I could see it every single year. Something happens, and then the downfall happens. It truly does happen like that. But I think this is a pretty chalk team. I got them at 10-7. I do have them as a playoff team. I just think last year this team really succeeded by throwing the ball. They were throwing the ball everywhere, even in the red zone, 5-yard line. They were still throwing it. I think with all that tape, it's going to be a little bit easier to figure them out maybe this year, and I don't have any faith in the running back room. So I think this is going to regress a little bit, couple wins. No longer winning the division, but 10-7, still respectable. Still a team that could lose in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah.
Keenan, I'd actually like to hear you next because I feel like you've been the most pro Cowboys out of the three of us over the years. So I would like to hear.
Have I been?
I think you picked them. Haven't you picked them for the Super Bowl at one point?
No.
No?
If I had, I don't remember doing so.
I swear you had.
I definitely didn't like last year or anything. No, I've never had a problem with the Cowboys. I think that I'm not the fans that go against the Cowboys, but as Timmy doesn't think that this is going to be the year they downfall, I don't think they're downfalling. They're not making the playoffs, and I have them under 500 at 8-9.
Wow.
So I just think that I don't love their offseason. What did they do? They got Zeke back. That's cool. But their running back, you're going in with Zeke, Dalvin Cook now, but he's on the practice squad to start, and Rico Dowdle. It's really cool. Obviously, the CeeDee Lamb thing, obviously he just got signed to a mega deal. And then you have Dak in his contract. That's in a weird spot to me. That's always been in a weird spot. They're obviously just a drama circus fest over in Dallas, but that's Jerry Jones. That's always going to be. The defense has a lot of talent on it, but we've seen in units that have lost their quarterback of that, which obviously Dan Quinn was, the unit doesn't do as well the next season. We obviously saw the Eagles, Shane Steichen's gone. We see that the Colts still keep that, but the Eagles don't have the same kind of potency offensively. We've seen it a lot of different places, and I don't think the Cowboys defense is going to be as good, even though I do think it's definitely going to be good. They're too talented not to be at least good. So I think this team's still going to be able to compete in games. They have a tough schedule because of the fact that they were the number one team last year. And so I have them at 8-9, not making the playoffs.
It's funny because Dallas, much like the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think are the hottest pick or the easiest pick to me when you look at all the teams in each conference to say, okay, this team's going to fall off. Especially when you look at their offseason, like Keenan said, what did they do, right? Especially when you look at that running back room. They easily probably got the worst running back room in the entire league. But I defaulted right back to where Tim is. I came down to 10-7 with the Dallas Cowboys. The last three seasons, they are tied with the Chiefs for the most regular season wins in the entire league. I do think oftentimes we can get postseason Dallas mixed up with regular season Dallas, whereas regular season Dallas is consistent. I'm not the biggest Dak Prescott fan when it comes to talking about him as an elite quarterback, but I do think he can at least get you regular season wins. And I actually think this defense is going to be better. I actually think they upgraded from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer. He's a reputable defensive coordinator in this league, a veteran one. He's known for being an asshole. So I think this is going to be a more fundamentally sound defense on a defense that's got explosive athleticism. So I think this defense is going to turn up. I think it's going to be their strength of their team. I think their offense is going to do enough as far as Dak and the passing game goes. And I see it being 10-7. I see them doing just enough to get in. Might be enough to win the division, but I see them doing just enough to get into the playoffs. And what happens in the playoffs, we'll see. We know the Cowboys don't have the best history, but I at least see them being a playoff team. Division, we'll see what once we go through the rest of these teams, but I definitely have them being in the playoffs. So I agree with Tim there. 10-7.
Okay. So I'm the only person that doesn't have the Cowboys in the playoffs. So it's interesting.
So what do you think?
But
what do you think then, Keenan? What does Dak's season look like? What does this defense's season look like if you think they downgraded? Like what? Give us the particulars.
I think it looks a lot like they did in 2017. So that 2017 year was the year after they had gone really 13-2, but 13-3, and then they lost to the Packers in the first round. I believe they went 9-8 that year. It's gonna be it's gonna honestly look like your traditional Cowboys season, post just the Jason Garrett Cowboys season, where they're in a lot of games, they cough up some at the end, games that they should have won, they lose. Some games controversial, whatnot. Dak's still going to have a good year. I think he might be pressing a little bit because I think he's going to be also playing for a contract, which sometimes is good, sometimes it's bad for people, depending. So it's going to be him pressing a little bit this year. They're going to have to throw the ball all over the place, but at the same time, they're going to semi-be predictable because they have to throw the ball over the place because they don't really have a rushing attack. So I think these games are going to be close. I don't think they're a bad team by any sense. I mean, 8-9, they're right under 500. If there was a 16-game season, I'd have them at 8-8 and just straight 500. I think they're just a 500 team that takes a little bit back from that 12-5 record that they've had for the last 3 regular seasons, I believe, and they just missed the playoffs because I think the NFC has more talent in it than when we think of it instantly. We're always like, oh, the AFC has way more talent than the NFC, but when you actually think about the NFC right now, there might not be any great teams, but there's a lot of good to really good teams.
There's a lot of well-coached teams in the NFC, and the Cowboys do have a tough schedule. They got quite a bit of big games.
Yeah, absolutely.
But really,
it's another factor.
My thing is the only places they truly downgraded would be running back and then their offensive line using Tyron Smith, right? We don't really know what they're getting now out of that left tackle position, which could honestly, that could make or break your season. Offensive line does make or break your season a lot of times. But like you said, them being a pass-happy offense, if that ends up being the case, if that ends up being, more predictable, yeah, that could turn the tide, so to speak. But, man, that defense is too talented. That defense is way too talented. They're getting Trayvon Diggs back. They got Bland on IR, so it's kind of a wash there. You don't have your full cornerback arsenal there, but still an entirely way too talented defense. And again, I think they're going to be well coached. I don't think they downgraded at all from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer. I think they're going to be A-okay on defense. Whether the offense and specifically whether the running game can hold up their end of the bargain will tell the tale with their season. And actually, more specifically from the running game, if the offensive line holds up their bargain, if they can protect Dak, they can create running lanes for these running backs because Zeke's still got some pop. It's not like he's 2016 Zeke, but he did okay with the Pats, but I don't think any of us like him in a starting role. But I'm very interested in this team. Again, they're exactly what the Jaguars are in the AFC to me on the NFC side. And each one of them I was ready to pick to not make the playoffs. I just couldn't get there. I think there's too much talent on both of those teams. And the coach on both sides is good enough, especially in Mike McCarthy's case. He's a good regular season coach. So, but we'll see. This is a team that has, everything's there for them to fall all the way off and have a 7-win season or, I don't see it being a 6-win season, but a 7-8-win season like what Keenan's got. So.
Yep. I have nothing else on the Cowboys. Tim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, sir.
Okay. So, next team that we've got to talk about is the Philadelphia Eagles. Timmy, what are your thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles season this year?
I think this is going to be a much better season. Obviously, they started out really well, 10-1, but then they just fumbled the complete second half of the season. Barely made it into playoffs, it seemed, and then they got walloped in the first round. I really like that. I like Kellen Moore. I think he's going to be a good offensive coordinator. A huge step up for Matt Patricia. It's not even a question. So I think that's the biggest thing. They get Saquon. the line's a little bit scary, with Kelsey retiring. But I think they're still talented enough. I think this is the most talented offense in the division. They're definitely above um, Dallas for me. So with that, with the coordinator upgrade, I think this team's a little bit better. They were 11-6 last year, I believe. So I have them at 12-5, winning the division. I do think this team is talented enough to get to 12 and be in that great team tier. It all just really comes down to the offensive coordinator position to me. I did see now Bradbury's expected to miss the first 6 weeks, which is a little bit of hit for him, but he did definitely have a little bit of a downgrade for their season last year. He was not up to snuff like he was 2 years ago, but it's still a hit to lose a starting corner. So
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, do you want to go next? Do you want me to?
Sure, yeah. I'm in lockstep with Tim here. This has been the theme over these these predictions with the divisions.
you won't be later, I promise you that.
We'll see. We shall see. I got them at 11-6, 12-5, that range. Haven't narrowed down exactly, but I have them winning the division. Look, you add Saquon to a team that wants to run the ball, and you make them from a top tier running team to now an explosive top tier running team. This is exactly what the hell they want to do. And you've got, whether it's Dallas Goedert, you got someone like Antonio Brown, who are big targets in the red zone, who are easy targets on a third down. This is exactly what Philly wants to be. And, you mentioned Kellen Moore coming in as the OC. Now you got Vic Fangio, one of the better DCs in the league, coming in as their defensive coordinator. So everything they needed to upgrade, they upgraded. It seems like it's crazy because a couple years ago when they made the Super Bowl, I think everyone would have said by far their defensive line was their strength. And now that might be their weakest part of their whole entire roster. They just have no depth there. They do have Jalen Carter, but they just have no depth at their defensive line. But they upgraded at linebacker, seem to upgrade in their secondary. Like Tim said, Bradbury's going to be out first few weeks. But Kelsey's going to, he was a leader in the locker room. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. So that's going to be a lot to replace as well. But overall, you got Saquon at running back. You still got your receivers. You still got a top-tier tight end. You still got Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, we mentioned they downgraded the second half of the year. He was hurt a lot of the second half of the year. So everything should be pointing up for Philly. There is a world where, they have another year from hell, I guess. But between their schedule and between all their talent, and again, the upgrade with Saquon at running back, it seems like the perfect storm for them to at least be a top back at the division, at least make it to the playoffs. I don't know about Super Bowl. I don't know about contending. I know a lot of people have them in that position. I'll have to see a little more, but I do have them back atop the division and, of course, back in the playoffs.
I have them atop the division because I don't have the Cowboys there, and God knows I don't have the Commanders or the Giants there, unless I'm crazy. But so yeah, they're almost by default there, but I don't think it's a by default kind of situation. I think this team's a very good team.
Yeah.
Obviously, they added Saquon Barkley. You add Jahan Dotson to go along with the receiving core of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You've got yourself Dallas Goedert at the tight end position, so you've got and a litany of receivers to throw to. Saquon out of the backfield. We saw a lot of times last year really how Saquon got his yardage was having to get in the receiving game because the Giants don't have the greatest of offensive lines. So, they have a great left tackle. They've gotten better, but, they don't have a great overall offensive line, so Saquon needed to get it receiving-wise. Then defensively, as Kyle had mentioned, they don't have the depth. That was the thing, even on their Super Bowl run or, their Super Bowl champion run or then their second Super Bowl run when they lost to the Chiefs, it was like they came in waves. And that's why Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham are so healthy at the end of these games, is because they were like, okay, you'll play 40 snaps, we'll play these guys 30 snaps, and we'll be okay. And they'll just get after you. They don't have that kind of depth anymore, but they do have depth defensively. Overall, defensively, they are good. They're not great, but they are good. And again, I don't think the Cowboys are going to be as good as Timmy and Kyle do. I think they're going to be solid. And then the division is the division. I think they'll be competing for the top seed in the entire NFC because naturally, I think they've got 5 wins in their division already. So I got them. 11-6. I didn't give it. Oh yeah, I think they're sweeping the Giants and Commanders, and they're at least splitting with the Cowboys. So they got at least 5 division wins, in my opinion. I got them at 11-6.
I will say it's weird because the Giants have played them pretty well the last few years.
Yes,
for no real reason. I don't know why that is, but
yeah. But I don't have much else to say about the Eagles. I think they're the class of the NFC East.
One thing I will say is Kellen Moore is interesting to me because he was the offensive coordinator in Dallas. So that is a nice, in the building thing. Maybe he knows some ticks for Dak or something like that. It might just be an edge up. They might go 6-0 in this division. I could see it. So
I do not disagree with that. It could absolutely happen. I would say split as of right now, but they could absolutely do that. Alrighty, so we're gonna just jump into Timmy's team next in the New York Giants. Timmy, I'm actually interested to what your outlook on the season is, and within that, if you could answer how you hope the season goes, because Kyle and I kind of gave like our hopes for the Patriots too, along with our predictions for what we think is gonna happen.
It's incredibly difficult for me to put together a perfect season. Because a perfect season for me would be they're winning some games, but if they're winning some games, that means Daniel Jones is probably still the quarterback next year. They probably won't have a pick up there in the top 10 to go really get a guy. And if they're winning games, I don't think that they will see a reason to move on, unless it is just like a financial thing. I think this defense is going to prove a lot of people wrong. I think this defense is going to be a top 10 defense. I'm not saying it's going to be top 5, but I think it's going to border top 10. Some weeks you're going to see a lot of flashes. So I have a lot of expectations for this team. I really like Malik Neighbors. That was the only person that I was comfortable with them picking in the first round, so I was extremely happy when they got him. And I think giving Daniel Jones an actual number 1 that can probably stay healthy for the whole year is going to show that Daniel Jones can be a potential quarterback in this league. His best receiving threat was Darren Waller, and he played, 3 games with him? 1 game with him? I don't even know if he even played multiple games, the way that their injuries lined up.
Guess things with Kelsey really got tough for him during the season.
Yeah, he just started mailing in them game checks, really.
He was preparing that one single he had.
Sorry, guys, can't make it out. I'm in the booth recording.
I'm in the booth. I can't make it to practice. It'd be such an insane. I'm in the booth, bros. I can't today. I got a lot on my mind.
I made my picks a week and a half ago. I put it all together, looked at everybody's games, and I did it game by game. And I said, this team's going to win here, and that just gives you the record. So when I look at it now, I think, wow, I'm kind of high on the Giants. But the way this defense is going to play, I love Brian Daboll. I think this year I have them 8-9. I think that's realistic. I think they can get there. I think there's going to be.
I did not think you were going that
high. Lot. Really, that high? They were 6-11 last year, with the worst offense in the league potentially.
True.
And they've upgraded their defense. So I do think this team is a little bit better than last year. I will take Daniel Jones. I will take Daniel Jones at the helm over all of the backups they had. I get it. DeVito was a great story, but he wasn't a quarterback. He's not even a backup quarterback. It was all Daboll making do with what they had. Saquon putting the team on his back. I get it. Saquon's gone. Singletary's still a solid back. I liked him when he was on Buffalo, and then he really shined last year. But I think you guys might not be as high, but it's really not crazy to say they win 3 more games this year. I really don't think that. So I got them at 9-8. I think there's a lot of one-score games. I'm talking maybe 10 one-score games on this schedule.
Okay.
Keenan,
Kyle, you go.
You go this time.
Oh, you want me?
You go this time, yeah.
Alrighty. Yeah, I don't have them at that. I happen to have them at 5-12. I think that they're going to be roughly the same as they were last season. This team You're right. I think they have a very good defensive line, and I think that can trickle into having a good defense. I just don't know if this offense is going to be able to put up points, and that's something that you're going to have to do. I get that. So in the division, I think they're probably 2-4, and
That's what I
then
got on that.
you have 2-4 in the division, and then you bounce out from there. I went through this schedule, and I think there are definitely games that are like, this is 50 here, 50 there, but I don't love this team. I really don't. And then I just don't. I'm not a fan of Daniel Jones, really not. So I have this team 5-12. There's not really much else to say. I think they have a good defensive line, a really good defensive line.
Really quickly, I definitely said 9-8, but I mean 8-9. I'm just reading the numbers backwards.
Oh, I was gonna say I wrote it on 8-9, so I think you might have said it. Okay. But like even so, just to clarify, Timmy has them at 8-9, not over 500.
Okay.
We're good. Yeah, the two records I had for the Giants were 5-12 and 6-11. I think I would default at 6-11. This team troubles me because you guys both make compelling cases. Obviously, I'm closer to Keenan than Tim. But like you said, they did win 6 games last year somehow with DeVito mostly at the helm. And he's, like you said, he's a career third stringer for sure. Like I wouldn't want him as my backup. You know what I mean? He's more so in the Bailey Zappi range. And I think Bailey Zappi's more so a third stringer than a second stringer, right? I think Dable's a good head coach. I do not think this has been a good front office. They've had more than a few regimes even since their Super Bowl season back in 2011. You could make a real case. I don't think Daniel Jones is anything special at all, but you can make a real case. This front office has done a disservice his entire career. They just have not put real weapons around him.
That's for sure.
They got Neighbors. Sure. It sucks because, like, what if they would have had Neighbors, Darren Waller, and Saquon? Like, if they would have brought Saquon back. If they got those three players right there, I think we all think this is a different team. And I think we all like the defense. But like Keenan, I have a hard time looking at this team and being like, okay, they're getting points from here, here, and here. It's hard. Unless Neighbors is, Odell 2.0, which he could be. He very well could make Daniel Jones look good on some days. But it's the matter of putting it together over, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right? So that's why I got them at 6-11. There is a world. I mean, I think if they somehow got to 7-10, which isn't far from 6-11, but if they got to 7-8 wins, like Tim is saying, I do think that could save Dable's job. Again, I do like this guy as a head coach. I think he's their best head coach since Coughlin left. I don't think that's crazy to say. And it sucks to think that, if he were to lose this year or have a 5-6 win season, that he'd be out of there. And then you're starting over once again with these Giants. But I will say, I think we all have different exercises for how we go through these teams and their records. When I go through the Giants schedule, it was very hard for me to come away with wins outside of the Commanders and maybe, stealing a game here in the division, stealing a game there, blah, blah, blah. But I will say, going through other team schedules, and you see at Giants on a Sunday at 1 p.m., and maybe it's a West Coast team or maybe it's a NFC South team, you can see the Giants tilting those games in their favors. If you've got a Florida team coming to you at 1 p.m. or if you've got a California team coming to you at 1 p.m., is a little different, especially depending on the month. So there is a world where I could see them getting to 7 or 8, but I got them at 6. But they are weirdly one of the more intriguing bad teams, I would say. I am very interested to see how this season ends up shaping out.
Okay.
Would you
go on?
Sorry, have you gone? Yeah, you've gone. Would you like me to read out the games that I think are wins for them?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. All right. So starting at the beginning of the season, we got the Vikings. I think that's a win. Then we got the Commanders. That's a win. They're going to lose to the Browns.
Where's the Commanders game?
September 15th.
No. Where is it? Is it in Washington?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking the date. It's at Commanders. It's in Washington.
I would split it.
The Giants have been 2-0, I believe, the last 2 years, and that's with terrible play against the Commanders. So I like
their quarterback position better going.
Not a long trip.
No, exactly. It's not a long trip. I
take the train.
I like to know.
So they lose to the Browns. They lose to the Cowboys.
I have 1, 2.
I believe that I have them losing against the Seahawks. I'm not positive on that. I believe I have them losing there. They lose to the Bengals. They lose to the Eagles. They will beat the Steelers. They will beat the Commanders again. They will beat the Panthers, the Bucks, lose to the Cowboys, beat the Saints, lose to the Ravens. I have them beating the Falcons. That's my one game that I was like, this is their reach. This is their limit. If they can win this game, that's their best win of the season. And then I have them beating the Colts, and then I have them losing to the Eagles. So that's 8 wins.
I am
That's
curious.
a perfect season to me.
I am curious about that Browns game. Granted, we'll talk about it in a few weeks here, but where is that at Cleveland or in New Jersey?
I just X'd out, so I have to get back into it. That is at Cleveland.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we got to give Cleveland that one.
So I have that as a loss, just because, like you guys are saying, it's hard to find points on this offense, and playing against the Browns at home is pretty difficult. So
that's a winnable game for him because, I mean, you just never know what Deshaun you get from week to week. So if the pass rush were particularly dangerous that week, maybe they could steal that. You just never know. They're one of those teams that could creep up on you. They probably could steal a couple wins from, actual good teams, but I don't think they're good enough to do it week to week, but we shall see. Should we hop into the Commanders?
Yes. Absolutely, Timmy. What do you think about the Commanders? I'm guessing you think they're the worst team in this division unless you think they are above 500.
I have them also at 8 and 9. I think they're going to be good. I really like Jaden Daniels. And at the end of the season last year, we made a pod, and I said, hats off to the Commanders because they actually went out and they signed a ton of players. Bobby Wagner, they got Austin Eckler. They have some depth pieces. They might not be stars anymore. They might be older. But they can definitely make some wins on this schedule. So I'm definitely way higher than people think. A lot of people are saying number 1 pick contender, but I think this team is going to impress a lot of people. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be in the NFL, Rookie of the Year category, 100%.
So I'm going to quickly go, Cog. I don't have much to say about this Commanders team. I think that your Rookie of the Year this year could look a lot like we were talking. I don't remember if it was on pod or before, but we were talking about Andrew Luck, and we were talking about how Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be Andrew Luck. I think it was before. And I think this Rookie of the Year race could look a little bit like the Andrew Luck RG3. Obviously RG3 ended up getting it, and they happened to be on the Washington Redskins at that time. Now, obviously, the Commanders. But where Jaden Daniels could do a lot, but I also think in this case that he won't be able to win it due to the fact that I don't think they're record-wise there. I also have them at 5-12, but I think they're going to be a more competitive 5-12. I think I have similar thoughts to Timmy as the Giants and the Commanders are going to be teams that are competitive, but I just think they're going to lose the games that Timmy possibly has them winning in. But I think that they're going to be close. I don't think the Commanders are going every week. You're like, that's a blowout. I do think that they have talent on that roster, and I do think that they will be able to play in a lot of these games. Not all of them, obviously. They will get blown out from time to time, but I got them at 5-12.
6-11 for me. 7-10, I think, would be best case scenario. Crazily enough, if they got off to the right start, because they have a lot of 50-50 games. This is a team, maybe if what happens to Dallas, what Keenan says is going to happen to Dallas, I do think this is a team that could sneak in there. This could be one of those teams where we're looking back or we're looking up week 14 and we're like, how is this team in contention? I think this could be one of those teams.
We saw the Texans do it last year, and we were like, wait, what?
Right. And Keenan, you mentioned the RG3 parallel with, Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams to Andrew Luck. I could see that as well. I mean, it's got like these RG3 vibes to it. Man, I mean, that was crazy. What was that? 12 years ago now? And it really seemed like, it seemed like all the tides were turning for Washington. And then by like week 2 of next year, it was just over. It was crazy.
Well, because what happened,
crazy
he wins Rookie of the Year, and then they go into that playoff game against the Seahawks, and he gets injured and turns everything up. And everything just goes from there. And that injury never came back right.
I do find it crazy that he never, I've talked about this before. I find it crazy that he never really got a second chance. He did get it with the Browns and he got injured the first game and then we never saw him again. It's crazy. Very honestly similar to career to Carson Wentz, but I'm digressing here. I could see Jaden Daniels restoring the vibes in the DMV. I really could. And I think he's going to have moments, even if it is, we all agree, again, it's going to be a losing season. But I think the vibes are going to be immaculate there. New owner, new head coach, new QB, like the definition of a new era for them. All they need is a new stadium, really. And because that place is RFK is not the best of places. Remember, they almost killed Jalen Hurts over there, walking to the locker room a
Yes.
couple years ago. So I could see a world where just damn, the vibes are so good. I mean, Dan Quinn's been to a Super Bowl. Maybe this team pops up a year ahead of schedule, but I do see it more being like a 6-win team. We're looking towards next year where they're really competing in the division. We see a lot of flashes from Jaden Daniels, and like Tim said, they kind of got depth all around. They got to rebuild the defense. So who knows what that'll look like. But I think the offense, we're going to see not only a lot of flashes, but, I think this is going to be a team on red zone on Sunday where it's just going to be a lot of highlight plays, a lot of just red zone trips, a lot of shootouts. So I'm looking forward to this Commanders team.
All right. Well, I think that was a good breakdown of the NFC East. Let's head on to the NFC West, and we're going to start with what?
Did you have some quick general question about the NFC East?
Yeah.
Storyline or a player that you are most looking forward to over the entire season? Like, what's the one thing you think about when you think about this division?
To me, it's Jaden Daniels. Honestly, I think he's the most interesting quarterback. So there's obviously that, like, before every single draft ever, even if there's a surefire number one, it's like, oh, could Jaden Daniels be the number one pick? There was that little talk there, and I think that Jaden Daniels has a lot of talent and a lot of potential, and basically now it's like, okay, could he become the best quarterback in this division in a couple years? Obviously, we need to see what Jalen Hurts is. Obviously, Dak, it will even be in the division in a couple years. We don't know what the Giants are going to do at quarterback. They have the opportunity possibly to get somebody, even if it's early or late in the draft, or they still ride with Daniel Jones. So I think it's how quickly can Jaden Daniels adapt to the NFL and how good can this guy be, especially at the start.
I feel like mine is just kind of biased, but I got to say Malik Neighbors. I want him to be the new OBJ. I want him to be, that guy. And I think he can do it. I totally do. A lot of people are really high on him. So high that even with Daniel Jones at the helm, he's going in the third round of fantasy football drafts, which is bizarre. I do believe that he could be the guy. So I'm just going to keep my eye on him 100%.
Absolutely. And Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by both rookies for sure. Each has a real case for Rookie of the Year this year, which is pretty dope. But I would say what I'm most looking forward to or most going to have my eye on over the course of the NFL season would be the Eagles. This is a team who has a top tier front office, but the end of last year and going into this year, yeah, there's people who are picking them for the Super Bowl or think they're a contender. But I think there's a healthy demographic that also thinks, they could have the season that Keenan's talking about with Dallas, where they could go 8-9, go 7-10. Sirianni's out of there. There's drama around Hurts and all that. I don't foresee that, but I could, I think there's a small world where that could happen. I think there's a 30% chance where that could happen. And, in the NFL where largely you have 3 to 4 year windows, unless your name's the Packers, unless you're the Chiefs, unless you're Brady and Belichick's Pats, it would be right on schedule for it to fall off for the Eagles. I don't necessarily see that happening, but I do think they're intriguing with all the additions on the coaching staff as well as their roster. So they're going to be my team to watch this season.